Hello, hello. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, good day. How's everybody doing? How are we today? Let me know if the volume is all good as you come in here because I had to adjust. I had to reinstall my microphone because it did something very weird that I couldn't figure out for the tactics video, but should be all fine now. So please let me know if there's any issues, if it's too quiet, too loud, too anything else, or anything else is going on. And yeah, thank you for that. But lots and lots and lots to discuss today, which is that, of course, I want to talk about big Joshua Zirkzee. I want to talk about more endless, never-ending, to the end of time, Kobbie Mainoo. I want to talk about something else as well. A few interesting things that I've been looking into in terms of the wingbacks, the production, the system, things like that, as well as Bruno's stats, his position, and also what is likely to happen in January at this point in time as our players are on the cusp of leaving us or AFCON, which is ultimately very upsetting, very depressing, and very disappointing, but nothing we can do about it. Sad, sad, sad. So lots and lots to talk about today. I think we'll get into it here in a minute. As you file in, please do make sure to drop a like and subscribe here on the channel. It's been an interesting few days. You know, it's I don't particularly tend to like measure this stuff too much, but it's really, really interesting how when United lose, some strange things. When United lose, just I've never in my life lost subscribers until this point of United losing, and or not even losing. We drew to West Ham rather, and not panicking and throwing your toys out on the pram. So that's it's just an interesting dynamic. I've never seen it before. I've actually never seen it before, and I don't particularly care about it because I always say my thoughts. That's the truth of it. But you know, you have to be wary. You have to be wary. I hope you guys all know it's very easy to sit here as someone who does YouTube and has all of this kind of shit and look at the analytics and say, I gain subscribers when I have this opinion and that opinion. And that should give you an insight into how certain channels operate, because that's exactly what they do. But I'll do the opposite. I will do the opposite. And I will sit here and tell you my thoughts and my objective truths whenever, wherever, at whatever cost. Because in the end, the righteous shall prevail, and that is the truth. But anyway, it's all good. It is what it is. I actually couldn't care less. Let's get into it as people come in here. But it does help for all of you who are here, who support me, and who are regular, particular enjoyers of the channel, whether you agree with me or not, and appreciate the perspective. It always does help. The likes, the subscribes, everything that you guys do. So I want to say a big thank you for that, as always, because the fair weather fans can come flocking back when the weather is once again fair, and they shall. And those days will be upon us. Don't you worry. The weather shall be nice again. So let's talk about a couple of things. I did want to discuss something because I was really actually quite interested in looking at a certain stat. I was really interested in looking at a certain stat, and I wanted to start with that, and then I wanted to get to talking about Bruno as well, because there was some interesting kind of takes and some interesting dialogue that there's been over the years. And you know me, I always like to look at, over the years, I say years, I meant weeks. I always like to look at things more objectively and say, all right, does it all match? Does everything match the narrative? Does everything match the current kind of perspective? Does everything match the way that people are talking about things and all of that? And one of the things that I found really, really interesting is this, right? So obviously, United as it stands are right now the second best team in the league in terms of expected goals. Do I have that number correct? They are second best in terms of expected goals. Let's take a look at it on screen here. Just ever so slightly behind Manchester City, of course, who scored far fewer goals, but forget about that for a moment. We are also third in actual goals scored. So it's not just a fake, stat about expected goals and all of that. United are a top chance creating team. But one of the counter arguments to this that a lot of people have made are that United are creating a lot of chances, but for the wrong people, right? Saying that it's a lot of the defenders accumulating a lot of chances. And so I said, you know what? We've talked about this in the past. Maybe it's fair. Maybe it's a fair discussion. Now, we may have different perspectives on the solution to this. Maybe it's a fair perspective that United create too many chances for, Dorgu, for Dalot, for defenders that shouldn't be receiving the ball in these dangerous positions. And, that's really the reason why United have all of this. And that, of course, we can, but it's the wrong people that are getting these sort of chances. And so it's an overinflated stat because we are creating chances and goals and opportunities for people who can't score them. And I said, well, even if that's the case, I believe that we should just go get better players for those positions. Some people believe that that's not the right thing and that nobody wants to play wingback because of that reason. So I said, okay, well, that's a difference of opinion. And I think that objectively, there's no 100% rightness there. However, ladies and gentlemen, it's not true in the first place. That's the underlying problem with this argument in general. In fact, let's go take a look here for 1 minute. And let's take a look at some other teams, for example, to see. Arsenal are top of the league right now. Let's go take a look at their fullbacks here. Ready? Here's young Jurrien Timber, of course, who United went for. Interestingly, Jurrien Timber is in the 91st percentile for non-penalty expected goals with 0.12 per game. Let's check Calafiori. Calafiori is in the 96th percentile with 0.16 non-penalty expected goals per game. Quite high. Diogo Dalot is in the 83rd percentile with only 0.09 expected goals per game, lower than both Timber and Calafiori. Nassau Mazraoui is in the 11th percentile with 0.02 non-penalty expected goals per game. Amad Diallo, of course, is in the 99th percentile with 0.23 expected goals per game. Patrick Dorgu is in the 78th percentile with 0.08 expected goals per game. So, what have we learned from this small little exercise in demonstration? United have created more expected goals and chances in the league than Arsenal, who are top of the league. Of course, that doesn't mean we're as good as them. And those chances are going at a higher proportion to the forwards and the players that should be scoring than they are to anybody else. In fact, Arsenal have more expected goals via their defenders than United do. So clearly, we are not seeing a situation where our expected goals are being inflated by the ball going to Patrick Dorgu and Dalot in dangerous positions where they're getting the final ball. Yeah, they're getting some chances. I mean, look, Diogo Dalot scored a goal recently. He got an assist again. He had a one-on-one on net. Yeah, he's getting some good chances. You know who else gets good chances? Everybody. Everybody gets chances. Everybody gets chances to score. All of these players are getting opportunities in games, not extremely often from these defensive positions. But we are not over egging our chance creation or expected goals by sending our worst players into the most attacking positions. It's going to the right people. It's going to Ahmad. It's going to, it's going to the people that we want. In fact, if we take a look at it, I'll tell you something interesting too. Bryan Mbeumo, of course, is in the higher percentiles of chances created for him and all that. And I will show you as well something rather interesting if you want to hear it. Bryan Mbeumo is 5th in the league in expected goal accumulations. And look who is 4th. It's Bruno Fernandez. So here's an interesting thing to follow up on another kind of narrative and just take a look at the numbers and say, have we got this wrong? Have we got this wrong? Bruno Fernandez, a big, giant, massive criticism has supposedly been that Bruno Fernandez has not been involved in our attack because he's playing deeper. I disagree with this. I think that the problem with Bruno playing deeper is that he's poor deeper. It's not his offensive contributions that are getting stifled by this. They're not. In fact, I would actually argue that Bruno Fernandez is getting more chances created for him, more opportunities to score because he has more attackers in front of him and he's running into clean air more often than not because the defenders are all occupied with all the forwards that United have. It's actually leaving excess space for Bruno Fernandez. And if we actually look at this by the stats, 7.48 expected goals and 4.47, I went through the numbers to check this out. Did you know that up through the 15th game of the season, I think this is about 15. All right. Look at how far down the expected goals you have to go to find Bruno. When he was playing in the 10, he was at 4.9, and he actually had a lower expected assists record last season as well. I went year by year. It's so much lower, it even accounts for the penalties, and I don't actually recall if he took any penalties last year. We haven't broke that down. But
Bruno numbers are highly inflated by penalties.
It may account for the penalties, it may not. I understand it's inflated by the penalties, but it's so much higher that even without all the penalties, it's almost equal to what he was doing previously. Let's take a look at it the prior season, and you'll see what I mean. We have to go to... This is Ten Hag's second season. Ready? Bruno in the 10. Where is he? There's Scott McTominay. Where's Bruno? Did I miss him? Nope. There he is. 4.64. So, Ten Hag's second season, that's 16 games in. He actually had more, once again, had more this season. After 15 games, I don't know. Let me filter it. I just want to find him. United. There you go. After 15 games, he's on 3.69. So not only is Bruno on his highest number of chances to score from this deeper position, but he's on the highest that he's been in a long time. And he's got, I think, more assists at this stage of the season than he's had throughout his career previously at this stage of the season as well. The XG is not mostly because of pens. He's on, yeah, you're probably right. I probably could sort by on non-penalty expected goals, but regardless, he's on his highest non-pen expected goals as well as near enough his highest non-pen expected assists, and his actual production itself is at its peak. So Bruno is, of course, getting huge returns from this deeper position. And that was That's where we are. So there's a few different things here that don't really marry up to the reality of the situation when it comes to, the narrative around United, the narrative around tactics, the narrative around all of this. And one of them is that, no, we do not produce for our fullbacks at an excess rate. That's not true. The production, the expected goals, the chances being created are mostly falling to the people that they're supposed to, our forwards, at a highest rate. For Bruno, even though he is playing deeper, he is actually getting as much opportunity to attack as he ever was before, okay, as a number 10. In fact, he is getting more creative opportunities than he ever was before, okay? And that's what it is. The issue is, with Bruno, that I will continue to state, we still live and die by Bruno, because the vast majority of all our creativity all runs through Bruno. His excellent performance against Wolves doesn't change that. It confirms it. I've asked you after each game, when have we won without Bruno making it all happen? And the answer is almost never. As great as he was against Wolves, and he was really good, especially again in the second half, he didn't put in that level of performance against West Ham and against Everton in the first half of Palace, and we massively struggled. So the problem there is not a matter of Bruno, as I've said many, many times. It's that as a team, we funnel everything via one player, and as such, we will always remain inconsistent in our production, application, and results, as long as that is happening. Because when you rely on one individual to do that, when you rely on one individual to do that, you are not, what's the term in business? Redundancies. You are not allowing for redundancies. You are not allowing for alternatives. And that is United. That is United, right? That is how it's been for a long time. And as a team, as I've said before, as a team, this is a problem. That it is just a Bruno team. That is a team issue, okay? And it means that at the moment, we cannot live without Bruno because they won't do anything. Diversifying, having redundancies, yeah, whatever you might call it. All our eggs, we've taken all our stocks and said, you know what, we're putting them in NVIDIA. Maybe it's a good bet. It's got great performance history. But ask any stockbroker and they wouldn't tell you that that's a good idea. But that means your money every single day lives and dies purely by that one stock. That's Bruno. That's it. That's the way that our team has built. That's the way that it is. It's all on Bruno. Everything has to run in through Bruno. And that is still a team issue, because as good as the win was against Wolves, it was just as bad against West Ham and Everton, right? So we have to look at it and say, we have to look at that and say, yeah, we can praise all of that, but we cannot forget that we miss that those games happened too. When we screwed up, those games happened too. When we couldn't create, those games happened too. When we couldn't succeed, we have to spread the scoring out between the rest of the team. We have to spread the creative burden out through the rest of the team. So that's what has to happen regardless as a team. And until we can do so, we are going to still be inconsistent, because there is no player on earth that produces every single game. I'll give you another example of this. In Ten Hag's first season, this player was Marcus Rashford, right? He had this purple patch for like 4 months where he scored every single game. The minute he stopped scoring, the team went to shit and we stopped winning and we never recovered. Literally, we never recovered, and our scoring never recovered because we were just a Marcus Rashford team. Okay? That's the point. It's about the team, not about an individual. It's not healthy as a team to be over-reliant on one single individual because nobody can keep it going game after game after game after game after game after game after game at a level for a team to score. Because even then, even if a player is scoring a goal per game, that's only 38 goals a season. You need more production from everybody. And that is the issue that we have. But it's also why you can't take Bruno out of the team. And I understand it. I get it. It makes sense. I don't like it as a team perspective, but it is understandable because, of course, of how good Bruno is. At the same time, I also firmly believe that Bruno is having some of his best stats because of his position in this, you want to say, slightly deeper role, but the reality is it's not. So I saw someone clamoring the other day saying, why don't we just play a back four with Bruno in front of Casemiro and then you have Mount in the midfield and all of that? And I said, hang on a tick. And I saw another revision of history, okay, which was that against Wolves that Bruno played a different role, and that's why it was so much better, that he was playing straight in front of Casemiro, that he was ahead of him. And, you know, I saw some of the genius tacticos talking about how Amorim clearly made a tactical switch against Wolves to have Bruno in a vertical line from Casemiro so that he was ahead more and all of that. Well, this is our positioning against Wolves. Bruno is up high. And you have these 5 attackers around him, and he's in a vertical line from Casemiro. This is against West Ham. It's the exact same thing. It's the exact same position, and it's the same position he's played in all season. In fact, against West Ham, he actually was in the opposition half even more than he was against Wolves. He was even further forward than he was against Wolves. So, no, it's not about get Bruno more forward. It's not about play Bruno in the 10 and it solves all of our problems or anything like that. It is a 4-4-2. It's always been a 4-4-2. Remember we talked about it in the pregame. Guys, it's 4-4-2 all the way down. Every lineup, every formation in football is a 4-4-2 in reality. No, I'm teasing. But seriously, that's pretty much what it is. So it's always been the same. But point is that we're so over-reliant because not blaming Bruno, because some of our other players have not yet stepped up and taken control of the game and all of that it has become it's still a Bruno team. So Bruno was in the same position against West Ham and we couldn't score. Bruno was in the same position against Wolves and we did score. Why? We just played better. There's no tactical switch. There's no system change. There's no explanation for this that we want to overanalyze. The players played better in the second half against Wolves than they did in the first half. They played better in the second half against Wolves than they did against West Ham. They played better in the second half against Palace than they did in the first half. They played better in the second half against Palace than they did against Everton. That's it. There's no other explanation. It's that simple. And that's why we will remain inconsistent. And I will continue to bet on us remaining inconsistent because we are always going to do the same thing until we change the team. This is who they are. If they can magically become more consistent, I'll be incredibly happy, but it's not a mystery. We are playing through one player, which means we are so reliant on needing Bruno to produce those moments of magic. One other player, however, that I think has a big influence on our win percentage, I saw a stat today, is Sir Mason Mount, of course. Sir Mason Mount a lot, mounting a charge into the team. We have a 76% win percentage when he plays this year. I don't know how we'd have a 76. Seems a little bit odd. But I believe that we win most of the games when Mason Mount starts. And one of the reasons for that is, of course, he's brilliant. Mason Mount is so good. The way that he works with the team, the way that he plays in the position, he's brilliant. He's really, really good. And Mason Mount is one of those players that I would suggest provides a level of consistency. Mason Mount is one of those players that when he plays, I do think he relieves some of the burden. Example, against Sunderland, it was the one game this season I felt we didn't need Bruno to win. Mason Mount played a huge part in that. And that is a big credit to him. And I think this is why everybody loves Mason Mount, because Mason Mount against Wolves was doing things I have never seen Mason Mount do in a United shirt. The long balls, the switches of play, some of the stuff he was doing. Good God. I did not know he had that in his bag, to be quite honest. So I think that that's an example. Better players, United play better. You know, I mean, it sounds crazy. Today, that seems to be a controversial take, that having better players, you'll play better football, but that's the truth of it. So that's a big thing. Obviously, you know, Cunha's been up and down and things like that as well. When Šeško, I think we've been missing Šeško too. It's a bit odd. I feel we maybe miss some of the stuff Cunha provides when he's out, but at the same time, we're really missing some of the stuff Šeško provides. And we also have, of course, I think, to start Mason Mount. So maybe it's good that we have all these players who can provide us with something as a team, because hell, we need it, don't we? So those are just some interesting things that I wanted to share at the start of this video to kind of discuss. You know, at this point in time, just some things I wanted to discuss, because I think that it's worth mentioning. There's still so much, you know, so many false narratives and things like that, and I'm just going to continue telling you the truth. And there's one other thing, and I'll make a video on this tomorrow. It'll be a controversial video. It'll be one that I expect will get a lot of interesting comments. So I'm just going to mention it to you guys here on this, because how many of you were here for my death march video prior to the Europa League final that I posted in the middle of the night? How many of you were here? How many of you were here for that? When I made this video the night. Like a night before the Europa League, it was like 2 a.m, and I made this very somber, very like almost depressing video. I think a lot of you will remember that one prior to the Europa League, because many times over this season, I have said that I've talked about progress, and I've talked about where we are, and I've talked about how you got a lot of people, people were really depressed by that video. It was kind of terrifying, right? People were really, I've talked a lot this season, a lot this year about progress, and about how we have to climb up the table, and how, you know, how I disagree with a lot of the takes, like, oh my God, we're Manchester United. Why shouldn't we be top 4? You know, we're Manchester United. Where are our standards and things like that? And I think that people people genuinely think that I'm being disingenuous in my statements when I say that this is not a good team this season. And being disingenuous in my statements that this team, that climbing up the table and playing mediocre football like a mid-table club into 6th, into 5th, into these positions is what we can expect, is the reality of our position. Because I made that video prior to the Europa final, and I said that the thing that we're going to have to accept here is that we're screwed as a club. You know, that we're in a really bad spot. And I think people haven't recognized it at that point in time. And that the reality of our position has sunk in. And that the climb up here moving forward is going to be slow. It's going to be painful. And it is going to look like how a mid-table team climbed up. Look at Aston Villa. They used to be the greats of Aston Villa are European champions, correct? They ended up multiple tiers down, and you look at how they've climbed since they got back into the Premier League to just surviving, to climbing, to climbing, to climbing, to climbing. And I'm not saying that we're ever going to be that low or anything like that, or that it was even that low. The fact that we were Manchester United and are Manchester United has kept us in a level of relevance that wasn't there in the past. But in terms of when you play other teams, we're ordinary now. They treat us like we're ordinary. They play us like we're ordinary. You know, they're not scared of us anymore. We don't start with any mental advantage. We don't start with any physical advantage. We don't start with any advantages. There is nothing in this team that has guaranteed us the right to be anything better than where we are. And it is a step-by-step climb up from there. And that's what that video was all about. I was terrified of this. And one, because I figured it was probably going to happen. And two, because I did not think people could handle it. You know, I didn't think people could handle it. Now look, yes, it's totally true. Not all teams have the financial muscle we have. That's why we can climb. But that still doesn't mean you do it overnight. We're $1 billion behind Chelsea's squad building in terms of when we started it over, right? We are $800 million behind Arteta's project. We are, $2 billion behind Pep's project in terms of rebuilding this team. We are, we are in such a bad. So far behind these clubs that even when we have our financial muscle, it's going to take time to build back up. You know what I mean? And I think they did more than could be expected over the summer and committed to it by throwing so many players and selling them. And they sped it up. And and SCR and these kinds of things are gone now. Have changed PSR, or they're here now. They've changed PSR. And so that means, yes, financially, we can speed this thing up. But this is the reality of our situation. This is the reality of our situation. So I'm being extremely generous in saying that I still would think this team could get into top 5, because I thought we were going to end up in 8th this season at the end of last year. And I thought they had a better summer than I thought was possible. We had a better summer than I thought was possible. But at the end of last season, I predicted we could build an 8th place team, and we go to 8th, then we go to maybe 6th or 5th the following year, and then we'd get ourselves back in there.
Bruno loves
because we had such a better
so
summer.
Much inch that he threatened to leave to get a wage hike. These Bruno sexuals better get ready for his farewell in May.
I mean, I don't know if I agree with all of that, to be fair. But I don't know if I agree with all of that, to be fair. But obviously there is a chance he could leave. But I don't know if I agree with all of that. In terms of that, I think it's a little over the top on Bruno there. But no, look, we had a better summer than possible, than I thought was possible at the time. And so I said, all right, our standards should be higher. Rather than 8th, I think we should be finishing 5th and 6th. So we're ahead of schedule to me. That's why I'm positive. That's why I'm okay with us being not so good from time to time. That's why I'm not panicking when we don't get a win every single week. That's why I'm not freaking out, because I genuinely believe this. And I'm pretty sure I'm right. I thought we would end up in 8th place. You guys remember the videos where I was predicting our summer? I thought we'd get some young guys. We'd get Tyler Dibbling. We'd get guys like that, and we'd end up getting 8th place. We got better players, and we ended up, and we're in 6th. And we could certainly move higher in the table. A win at the weekend, we could move all the way up to 4th this weekend quite easily. It's quite possible. So, it is what it is, man. in that respect. It is what it is. So I mean it. And I think that a lot of people haven't confronted reality because at the end of last year, they felt, we were much better than we were, and we're not. We're not. And we continue to overrate things a little bit. So I think we're ahead of schedule. I think we're actually ahead of schedule, and I genuinely believe that. There's not a disingenuous bone in my body about it. It's not about defending Amram. If you were looking at, let's say you had a business and you said, you know what, this quarter, I think it's realistic for us to sell 100 widgets. Okay. We're going to sell 100, Snickers. I don't know what the hell to think about. You sell candy bars. You're going to sell 100 candy bars, and then we'll keep it childish. You're going to sell 100 candy bars, and then you got a sales manager, and he sells 105. You don't sit around and go, well, yeah, but we should be doing 1,000. So we set that realistic target of 100. They did a little bit better, and it's shit. You know what I mean? That's not how you work. I would think, or at least I would, that they did a good job. So it is what it is in that respect. We are where we are. And I think it's a little bit better than expected. Let's move on to transfers. Let's talk about some of these transfers a little bit. We're inconsistent, and we will remain inconsistent until we make changes to the team for the reasons that we have mentioned in prior to this. First and foremost, let's talk about Big Josh Zirkzee. Okay, we just need Wilcox to finish the whole Cold Harbor file. Exactly. There you go. Let's talk about Big Josh Zirkzee. So, interesting one here. I have to follow up on something that I was told because, as it were, in the position that I'm in the community and stuff that was created and all of that, occasionally people reach out to me and say, things that they've heard. And someone reached out to me yesterday to tell me something about Joshua Zirkzee. And today, we get reports that United have had discussions with Roma, but Joshua Zirkzee wants to stay and fight for his place. Now, yes, there's a juxtaposition in the title of the video and the description of the video and in the situation we're in now. You have Joshua Zirkzee here, who's newer to the club, who's 24 years old, who is Young Player of the Year in Italy, who's second fiddle to a starting player who's a lot younger than Bruno Fernandez, and he wants to stay and fight for his place in the team. I find that very respectable. Joshua Zirkzee's also been left out of the Netherlands squad. And, there was a lot of question over whether he'd want to leave to find, to earn his way back into the national team with the World Cup upcoming. But it appears as though he wants to stay at United and fight for his place. Obviously, he's played a little bit more recently with the injury to Benjamin Šeško, scored a nice goal, but he still didn't start the last game. And it is interesting that he wants to stay. Personally, I would keep him if he wants to stay. I wouldn't be opposed to selling him. But if he wants to stay, then he should stay. And I respect that. And I think that is if he wants to stay, understanding that he's a squad player who is competing for a position in the team, good. We need that. Because I'll tell you why we need that, in my opinion. You run into a bit of an issue where good players often don't want to be squad players. And so you end up, stop implying Mainoo should do the same. Okay, I'll stop implying it. Mainoo should do the same. Mainoo should do the same. Mainoo should do the same. You have good squad players who don't want to be squad players, and then they often leave. And and that makes your squad weaker. It's important when you're building an overall squad to have decent players who are okay with being squad players. That doesn't mean they're unambitious. That doesn't mean that they are lacking in in anything. It just means that they have that perspective, that they're willing to be in that position and compete for their spot and see if they can earn something out of it. I think that's respectable. I think that's important. I think Kobbie Mainoo should do the exact same. And I think that if he was committed to the exact same, then he would be playing more right now. You say that it's not the same thing, that he won't be picked against Bruno. Okay. You can just decide that you live inside Ruben Amorim's brain and you've made that decision and all of that. But look, I mean, I do find it very interesting, the perspectives on all of this. Joshua Zirkzee came through Bayern's academy. Joshua Zirkzee is a Bayern Academy product, one of the biggest clubs in the world, one of the most successful clubs in the world. He debuted for Bayern in the league there. He left Bayern because he couldn't get minutes there, went to Italy, and won Young Player of the Year prior to coming to United, by the way. So, again, the perspectives here are a little bit different. Now you have United fans saying Joshua Zirkzee is shit, and that's why he should go. But you flip this story around, and you have a very highly rated youth prospect from Bayern that went somewhere else, has been very successful as a first-team player, came to United, and is having a little bit difficult go of it. And I respect that he wants to stay and fight for his place at United and wants to be a part of the team. I just respect that. I think that's respectable. My opinion is always, and always has been, that players, that commitment matters, and that it does matter, and that it is important for players to be committed and try. Zirkzee knows that we've signed a 75 million striker ahead of him. He knows that too. So he knows that it's going to be a tough fight and it's going to be limited minutes, but he also knows that next season there will be more games. There will be more minutes. We will be very likely back in Europe, and there's going to be games for everyone when we get into next season. There really will be, which is the long-term perspective on all of it. But I think it's good. I think that we need that kind of depth, and I'm happy with his commitment for it. I think that it's a good thing. I'm happy when anybody wants to commit to things. I do think that as far as Kobbie Mainoo goes, obviously the news today, again, that it's potentially he could go out on loan or be sold. I told you that the other day, that if you were to, I said the other day that if Kobbie were to go, there is a potential chance that he could be sold. That would be the end of it in general. And unfortunately, that is possible. Laurie Whitwell, when he was on the Paddocks podcast video the other day, was talking about this quite a bit, about the potential of that, and that maybe he would be sold, or whether he's loaned or sold, and that it's now quite up in the air as we move into January. Kobbie's situation is very up in the air at this point in time, unfortunately. And like I've said before, there's more to it. There's more to it. People are starting to come around to obviously the idea that there is more to this, and I hate the discussion of it, because you just cannot become reasonable about it, about these kinds of discussions. We just can't become reasonable about it. So we will see in that respect what happens to him. But there's obviously options for him to go. He is requested to leave again via representatives as well to the club. I think that there certainly becomes a point where they will let him go, even though they didn't want to in summer because it was too late. But it also ties into, can we get anybody?
We are Manchester United and all the players/staff and everyone works at the club should fight each other to earn their place. No one bigger than the club.
Yeah, I don't know what's debatable about that. It's very, very odd to me, the idea that, I don't know, man. It's very, very odd to me, the idea that a player shouldn't have to fight for their place and that there's nothing else that goes into it one way or another. Look, all I think that people should be acknowledging here is that there's obviously more to this than you think there is. There's obviously more to it than they think there is. Okay? There's just obviously more to it, you know? Like I said, there's more to it. I don't know, man. It's a frustrating conversation because once you've made your mind up that it's player over everything, it's hard to back down from this, you know? There's just more to it, you know? And at the end of the day, that's life. So I'm not going to stoop down and get into talking about that by insulting or bringing things up because it's rather pointless, but there's just more to it. Regardless, Kobbie wants to leave. I think any player that wants to leave should go. That's my position. It's been for a long time. Pogba was my favorite player. When he asked to leave, I said let him go. Anytime a player asks to leave, I think you should let them leave. It's just what it is. It's just my reality of football. It's my reality of teams. If a player wants to leave, they should leave. And that's fine. And I would let a player go anytime they want to leave. It doesn't really matter to me who they are. If they want to go, let them go. It's kind of that simple. So I don't want to get into it beyond that. That's just my view on it. Anytime a player wants to leave, I think they should go from a philosophical standpoint. I don't think it does any good. Once a player's made their mind up about wanting to go, what else can you do? It's not a good atmosphere. It's not a good thing for them, you know? I think he should go. And I think it would be the best thing for him. I said the same about Pogba back then, that he should go. If players, who are the players? Who are the players who want to leave? I hear about one player who wants to leave. Okay. I hear about one player who wants to leave. Rob. One, not players. I hear about one. I hear about one. And I would wish him the most success. My hope is that he stays. It always will be. My hope is that he stays and things work out. But it's looking more and more like it's just not going to go well, man. I don't know what to say about that. It just looks like it's not going to work. You know? And unfortunately, like I've said before, I think people tie a lot of it to Rashford, you know, and there's a lot of people who are big Rashford fans that say that, you know, Amorim got rid of Rashford and he's going to do the same to all these guys when there's literally nothing. It's so wrong. It's so wrong on that front. But it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to me. The club needs to be building the way that it builds. It's a lot bigger than Ruben Amorim. It's on. Everything has always been about the club as a whole and their views on it, and they will take a look at it. And they've drawn their line, and they know where they're at, and we'll see what happens in terms of summer. We'll see what happens in terms of January and in terms of summer. A lot of fans called that United PR would turn fans against Mainoo. They were correct, much like the club did with Martial, Pogba, and Dean Henderson. Sorry, Boylo, but Martial was a prick. Pogba was a prick, and Dean Henderson was a prick. The club didn't need to turn any PR against them. Martial's agent literally came out and said, I'm going to fight. We're going to wait out the manager. Got himself $300,000 a week and then couldn't bother to be fit for the next 3 years. Fuck Anthony Martial. He's a complete waste of space that the club spent 60, 80 million on to not play for years in terms of wages. Years. Pogba's agent was so bad that Sir Alex wouldn't do business with him. I don't know if you remember that, by the way. That wasn't United PR. Sir Alex called his agent every name under the sun for how he managed the players and what he did with someone like Paul Pogba. Okay, and Dean Henderson was just, I think Ollie should have given him a chance, but Dean Henderson didn't want to stay. You know, Dean Henderson didn't want to stay. He had an opportunity to stay, and he said, no, I'm not coming back, and refused to return to United. So no, nobody turned anybody against those players. They were pricks. They didn't want to be at the club. It's that simple at the end of it. It is that simple. That's the player FC I'm talking about. You know? That's the player FC I'm talking about. Where it's a refusal to accept the reality of the situation in terms of what actually happened. You know? Yeah, Dean Henderson wouldn't come back for Ten Hag. He refused. Like, what else can you do? Like, this is the reality of the club that has been. This is the reality. So, no, drawing those parallels to other players doesn't do Kobbie favors. I'm not comparing him to Martial or Pogba. You're the one doing that. I wouldn't compare them. The club did not physically break Martial and Pogba, man. Nah, man. This is what I'm saying, man. You're saying stuff you don't know anything about, unfortunately. You're saying stuff you don't know, you know, but whatever, man. It doesn't matter. Like I said, people have all of their different perspectives. It's all different opinions and things like that. Like, all right, brother. The club broke Anthony Martial. Come on, man. Okay. All right. It is what it is. It is what it is. People will have different opinions. It's all good. It's fine. It doesn't matter. Yeah, this was all commented on before. I was really happy to see Aiden Heaven get his chances again. But yeah, in the January window, when we move into that window, obviously there's been a lot of talk of like maybe there's been a lot of talk about, we might not get any serious business done in January. And unfortunately, like we know, that's always been a bit of the case, right? If we cannot get our major targets, which is what was mentioned, then we might not get anybody. And the difficulty is, are we going to be able to get one of those major targets in? And that's the concern at this point in time. It's like, are we going to be able to get those types of players in the door? Are we going to be able to convince one of them to join? Not really convince them, but rather potentially convince the club. And I spoke about this earlier in the week and said, we need to, I think it was earlier in the week or it was last week, and I talked about Baleba, and I said, we need to make this big move for Baleba. We need to make a big move for Baleba. So, and I said that because I think he's potentially the only player that in summer we would really like, that we could shift forward into the January window. That we could shift forward into the January window, that we could move ahead into the January window. That's one of the only players that we could do that because of the situation around Baleba and all of that. So I would keep an eye on that one, just because I think there's a chance that Brighton may look and say, yeah, we're not going to get other buyers. But not, obviously, yes, not for Caicedo money. We're not going to pay 100-something million. But I think Brighton may be wising up to the idea of what they may have to do with Baleba and cash in. If that kind of opportunity can fall to us, that's very good. Otherwise, if Kobbie Mainoo were to leave, they would want to be making a signing. That's going to be one of the factors that determines whether he leaves. And the reality is right now, I think if we can sign a midfielder, Kobbie's gone in January. Just based on everything. If we can get a midfielder we want in, then I think Kobbie's gone in January. I think that's where we're at this point in time. So yeah, that's a part of it. That's really the issue there. The issue you have with Adam Wharton is that he won't join without Champions League. We won't get Champions League unless we make a deal in January. The other thing that I will say is, as far as I've heard, I don't think Adam Wharton is the one-of-one game type of player. I don't think he's, if we're going to get one midfielder, that it'll be... I don't think if we get Adam Wharton that he'll be the one guy. If we're going to get one guy, I think it's going to be somebody else. And then Wharton would be more of a second signing, again, in the case of potentially a Bruno departure or something like that. But it's looking more and more likely that we will end up getting two midfielders in the end. At the end of the day, I think it's becoming more and more likely there. And the question starts to become, who the hell is going to depart, at this point. But yes, it's the January window is complicated, man. Like I said, a month and a half ago, my biggest concern is that we are looking at getting our major targets in January. We can do it. We have the money for it. If we could get one of those major targets in January, we will do it. We will do it. But that has always been the concern. That has always been the debate. That has always been what's up in the air right now. Is will that happen? Will that happen? Can we get one of those? And if not, who? Who else? I saw Ederson again. Stomped all over Chelsea. Was it Chelsea he played against? I believe it was. Anyway, he had a really good game yesterday as well. Every time I've watched Ederson, I've really liked him. I'm desperate for United to act on their having watched him for some time, because at the price point that is being discussed for Ederson, it's such a low risk move for a potentially quite good player that they have to do it. And so, yeah, I think that, January is a difficult window, but, and like you say there, it's a Glazer saying, but it's also true. But I look at that and I go, cool, it's difficult. Do something. Don't care. Do something. Do something. And I'm not going to change that kind of perspective. And I think that obviously we've heard a little recently that, it's like a little bit of like, playing down the situation. I think there's been a bit of playing down of January now in the last few days, which worries me, because essentially when that happens, what is going on, and I'll dig into this a little bit more, is that I think that they're running into those problems with getting long-term targets in January, and they're finding it harder and harder to get those long-term targets in January. And it's and a lot of the players that they're checking out that they would be interested in, it's not necessarily going well. That worries me, that worries me as well. And so I am a little bit concerned that is there a scenario where we end up getting nobody in January? And the truth is, yeah, there is a scenario where we end up getting nobody in January. There is. That doesn't mean I think that's acceptable. I think it would be a huge miss. I think it would be a huge miss for them. I think it would be a huge miss at this point in time. So, yeah, I think it would be a huge miss to not do some business there either way. There should be somebody else. But I think we will do something. I still get the sense that something is going to happen. It's just a little bit unclear as of yet. And I think that there will be the sense of opportunity that they will jump on. I still get the idea, not in the same way. Like, I think the within club narrative is very much, maybe not. Maybe we won't do something. I think that is the sort of the talk within the club that it's not seeing anything major, that's being lined up or anything like that. And that's what we're going to get. When I get the sense of that there might be a push for striking at the goal of opportunity, it comes from a little bit of a different angle. And I just think that the ownership will push a little bit here in January and say, we might need to do something, and we should go for something, and we should strike at this opportunity to get something. That's just my own sense from conversations I've had on my side, which are on occasion just via slightly different channels than I think whatever gets into media and things like that as well. So from the conversations I've had on my side, it makes me a bit more optimistic than the things that are coming probably via more like within the club connections and things like that. So I still remain optimistic because I believe that there, from what I hear, that there is, that there will be a little bit of pressure to do something. Yeah, I don't think we'll be getting Sergio Ramos though, but I think there will be a bit of pressure to do something. It's kind of an interesting one, you know what I mean? Where it's kind of an interesting one where in years past, we've had owners be extra conservative while the club wants to do business. And I actually almost see it the reverse now. Another unpopular take, but I'm just telling you the truth. I think ownership would like us to be fairly aggressive. And the club staff are trying to be a little bit conservative and say, we've got a plan, we've got to stick to it, we've got to not make mistakes. And I think that the ownership is a little bit like, so I'm not saying this is true. So don't believe it. But it makes me think, because I've heard things on my side for a little while, like I've said, about there being a bit of a, maybe we should, that how they think, and that there might be some pressure to do something. So if we look at like Sir Jim and like him getting pissed off against the Wolves game, I was saying to Phil in a podcast, like Wilcox and Omar will sit there stone face all game, observing. Sir Jim shows up the game, it goes bad. You're going to see him. How many pictures have you seen of Sir Jim when we concede? Like, oh, fuck, or pissed off or yell. You'll see it all the time because he's looking at this, as I've said before, and saying, guys, I don't have all the fucking time in the world, okay? And yes, we need to do it right. And yes, we need to follow a process. And yes, he's a logical man. He is. He's an analytical guy. He's a smart guy. But he is also emotional and a football fan. And, he was the one that in summer pushed them to go and just get it done for Brian Mbeumo and spend the money and do it. And I think that I get the idea a little bit that he's continuing a bit of a push in that direction, especially with where we are in the table and what's going on. I think that he's looking at it because it's also big for his plans that we're back in Champions League. Very important for his long-term plans that we get back in Champions League as soon as possible. So I just get the idea, and I wonder when I see those big, like, when I see those pictures, it just makes me think, because of the things that I've heard, maybe Sir Jim's putting the pressure on a little bit and saying, guys, this is unacceptable. It's not good enough. We cannot wait till summer to do something about this. Let's go, okay? Because I just think that's how he thinks. And that's good, though. That's what you want. And I don't think that that's a bad problem. No, and the thing I'll say there's on that, Santiago, is I get that perspective. That means we don't have the right guys in Omar and Wilcox. I don't think that's necessarily true. There is a value in having a balance of perspective. There is a value in having a balance of perspective within a group. There is a value in having a balance of perspective and all of that. I think that it's just getting the balance right. You want your owner to be demanding and wanting success, okay? You want them always to push you to be competitive, to be better, to do more. You hire people because they have to look at it a little bit more logically, a little more sensibly, and you're always pushing them to make sure that they are not getting mucked down in that too much, but they're right to look at things from a logical perspective and all of that, you know? So I think it's actually a good give and take there. I think the problem is, I've seen this in businesses too, where you have people in place that are more ambitious than the ownership, then you're screwed. Because then you have people who are trying to strive for greatness and they're constantly being stopped. They're trying to strive for more and they're constantly being pulled back. That's an awful situation that will kill you. But the alternative is probably more what you want. It is horrible. It's horrible to be in a place where you are striving for something and ownership pulls you back and says, nah, we're not going to go for it. That's soul destroying. You know, so I think we've got the right balance of it at this point in time. Look, a couple more points I'm just going to say as my opinions. You can take it or leave it, but I'm asking you, any of you who see things another way, just to open up your mind to the possibility of something, because I'm not saying this for no reason. Like, I'll sit there and go, look, I think there are people, just to wrap up today's conversation, there's a couple of points. We'll talk about Amarim, we'll talk about that. Yeah, Noosa's an interesting one, and so is Njai. But I think potentially more for summer. But yeah, you never know. Maybe we push something like that into January. Maybe we push like a Gehi into January, and it's not a midfielder. Maybe we just do something. But to wrap up today's video, in some of this talk about Amarim and talk about Kobbie Mainoo, I'm asking you, as somebody, I'm not, believe it or not, and I'll give you some examples here. I don't just agree with everything that Ruben Amorim does. Not even close. It's kind of funny because every single week I sit here and moan about Ruben Amorim picking Casemiro. I moan every single week about Bruno. I disagree with Ruben on a lot of things. I thought we should have sold Bruno. Ruben wanted to keep him. I disagree with his opinion on a hell of a lot. I spent the first half of the season screaming at him and saying I've lost faith in the manager because he wasn't picking Ahmad out wide. I know what I know, and I know what my perspectives are, and I don't agree with Amorim for the sake of agreement with him because I'm some manager dick sucker. I've never been that person in my life, as you will probably know. But what I'm asking you to do is to understand that and say that, look, you have people saying right now, right, well, Kobbie has to except, Kobbie has to compete with Bruno or Casemiro who never get benched. So it's not the same situation. And I'm telling you, there's more to that because you're looking at that very late in the game, my friends. You're looking at that very late in the game right now. And I'm just asking you to open your eyes to one possible perspective. Maybe the reason is the other way around. And if there was felt to be ultimate commitment from Kobbie Mainoo to fight for his position, that they would get subbed more and he would get more chances. Just maybe. Because it was only the second game of the season, 1 week in to the Premier League, that Kobbie Mainoo's agent went around briefing and requesting to leave the club before the end of the transfer window. It was only 2 games into the season. That means that has been bubbling. That means that had been growing for some time okay? Those things don't come up out of nowhere. Those things don't come up out of nowhere. So what I'm saying is, I'm not saying he's not good enough. I'm not saying this or that. I'm not insulting him. But what I am saying is just to have the potential perspective that perhaps a player isn't playing, not that you're looking at it from one way, okay? Which is that, well, why should Kobbie Mainoo buy in? They never sub anybody else out. When there is an alternative perspective that those players aren't being subbed out for him because he's not committed to the team and because that is not what is felt by Amorim and the club, not just Amorim, that is a potential perspective to take. And that the fact of the matter is, you don't know. And you could say, I don't know. I think I do, but it doesn't matter. Assume I don't know. Fine. Then none of us know. But there are multiple perspectives on this. There just are. And I think there is, unfortunately, an unwillingness to look at that and say, okay, maybe there are multiple perspectives to this. Maybe there are multiple ways of looking at it. Maybe it isn't the way that I'm saying it. You just don't know. Okay? And that's all I would leave you with. Can have your opinion on it. Have your perspectives on it. Have everything else on that, and that's fine. But you don't know. And that is okay to be in that situation that you don't know. I think what is very, very obvious, though, we do know he's requested to leave the club. We do know that. So, okay. You know what I mean? We do know certain things. So that's one. And then someone asks, what reason is there to stick with Ruben Amorim or something like that? What are the positives? Okay. I'll share with you what I think the positives are right now. Okay. That's all. And then you take it as you were. All right. Here's what I think the positives are. 15 games into the season, United are at plus 10 expected goal difference, plus 7 non-penalty expected goal difference. Their performance-wise, we're right around 3rd to 5th in the league on everything. We've scored the 3rd most goals in the league, created the 2nd most chances, and maybe the defense needs work. Since the start of October, United are 4th on points, 2 behind Arsenal. Since the start of October, United have the 3rd best expected goal differential. Since the start of October, United have the 2nd most goals scored. Since the start of October, United have the 6th best defense. So Why would I stick with the manager? Because we're getting better. That's all. That simple. The team's getting better. The performances are getting better. The results are getting better. The club's getting better. It was a disaster for the last few years. That's it. We've seen progress. That's what I asked the manager to do personally, and that's what we're getting. How high that progress goes will tell me whether we should keep him at the end of the season or not. If he gets into Europe and 6th or better, then cool. If he doesn't, then I would make a change. Simple as that. How much progress he made, given the tools that we've given him, will for me determine whether or not he is and should be sticking around next year. That's all. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that's it. I mean, we don't have to be more complicated than that. We're a better team than we were last year. Significantly better. And better than 2 years ago. Significantly better. That's enough for me. That's honestly, that's all I care about. An upward trend. That's what we've all been at. That's what we want. That's what's going to get us back where we're going to go. Everything else is too complicated, right? We all have different opinions on how we play. We all have different views when we watch the game in terms of eye test, and we all have different views on, oh, that performance was shit versus that performance was good. United are scoring goals. United are improving. United are earning more points. United are winning more games. Those are objective facts. And on that basis, United are getting better. So the objective facts keep Ruben Amorim in a job, while a lot of subjectivity is the subject of why he should be sacked. So, and that's fine. Everybody's going to differ in those kinds of opinions. But that's the important judgment to me. Let's see where we are by the end of the season and see, do we continue to improve and how much? And for me, that will determine whether we should keep him next year. I'm starting to think we should go fifth, maybe even. Would be my standard for him. I said 6, but I'm thinking maybe I should even increase it. But I think that also depends a little bit on what happens in January. So yeah, we'll see. Okay, that's pretty much it. That's everything I want to discuss. Like I said, I'll come up with, I got some other things I want to talk about tomorrow on that front and talk a little bit more about progress and where we're at and make some comparisons so we can all see. But yeah, look, respectfully, as I said at the beginning of this video, I'll share my opinions, but I'll also share the things that I know. And I welcome the disagreement on it. There's a lot of different subjective opinions on everything. All over the place. It can be everywhere, you know? What is this? The only thing that's disappointing to me that I look at is, you know, when people, and I say this negative and positive, by the way. When we draw or lose, you're getting people. I mean, at halftime, I looked. I don't care, but at halftime, I look. You know, and it's halftime of the Wolves game, and people are calling you out because United aren't winning, and practically celebrating United being crappy, like celebrating it, you know, that United are in a bad state in that game because they're so happy to be proven, to feel that they are getting proven right about, you know, things going the wrong way, you know? So I'll give you one person here. I'll just give you one example here, right? I made this tweet, and it was specifically, to be quite honest, to bait out people like this, right? This was at halftime, 1:51, by the way. That's 1:51 local time. That was halftime of the Wolves game. Because I did this tweet, Amorim having a shocker with his finishing today. This is effectively a celebration a celebratory tweet that United conceded before halftime. Like, yes, look at how right I am about United being poor. It's sad. This is sad. This is fucking sad. Now, I'll also tell you in the reverse to be balanced on this. I saw Sully tweet a positive about Kobbie Mainoo in the post-match. That he came on, did a good job, had a good game. Sully is not sitting there like stirring up massive drama every fucking day. He posted a positive tweet about Kobbie Mainoo and had people in his mentions attacking him for it. If we'd lost the same, what, and those are people who are probably manager in and all of that. And what I'm saying there is that we don't have to do this to people. Why do we got to attack me when we're losing, or anybody else? And why we got to attack people who said something positive about Kobbie when we won? Why do we do this? Why do we got to do that? We don't have to put down Kobbie Mainoo and say he played like shit or something to be, to support what's going on or to be positive about the direction of the team. You know what I mean? I really don't like it. And it does go both directions. I really don't like it. That's what I'm saying. This isn't like, this wasn't like me, I'm a victim of this situation. I'm saying that like, Sully's a good friend of mine, I would consider. I speak to him regularly, and he posts news, and he's a good resource for the United community. And it was real positive on Mainoo here. And I don't try to be negative on Mainoo. I try to be in a little bit of a different situation. But he posted something good, positive about our own player after the game, and it was like, why you got to jump on him? You know what I mean? It's crazy. And again, like. It goes both ways, right? It's when we're losing, it's like people are celebrating it. And when we win, it's like, see, Kobbie Mainoo shit, we don't need it. We don't need to do that. We just don't need to do that. And it makes me a bit sad. You know what I'm saying? But I appreciate all of you here. And I appreciate the people who stick around and do all of that. Because again, even if you disagree with me on my opinions, even if I disagree with you, I respect your right to have them to communicate your feelings and thoughts and things like that. And at the end of the day, the only right opinion we should all have is the hopes that United will be better in the future and that we will continue, that we will win games and that we will get back to where we need to be. And I thought Mainoo was decent, by the way.
Twitter fan base is a toxic cesspool.
The Man United Twitter fan, yeah, it just is. It just is, right? It just is. That's the case. You know what I mean? Yeah, we had people saying they hoped Amram would be sacked so that we would lose so that we would sack. Like, it's just, that's the only wrong opinion you can have. You can totally disagree with me on Amram. You can totally disagree with me on so many things. And it's totally fine. The only wrong opinion is this practical celebration when we lose. And I also think, again, we don't have to turn on Kobbie Mainoo just because we win. Like, it shouldn't be a war between, we don't have to set up a war between player and manager. You know what it reminds me of? I remember a year and a half ago, we ended up with a war between Garnacho and Rashford fans. You remember that? There was this big war between Garnacho and Rashford fans. And every time you'd have people being like, you should be starting Garnacho. Rashford's shit. He's a cunt. He's a prick. And then you would have the exact, other side of it going the same way. You know what I mean? And it was like, why do you have to pit the players against each other like that? We don't need this type of war between these things. I try to explain the Kobbie Mainoo situation with Ammer and all of that to be as objective as possible. As objective as possible. Just, I'm trying to speak about facts on it, where I've said many times, I really want Kobbie to stay. I've never once said he's a bad player. I've never once said he's not talented. I never once said he's shit or anything like that. Never once, and I never will, because I think he's a really good player, and I don't think we have to turn around history. on things. And every single day, I think that Kobbie should start over Casemiro. But you see, I can see it both ways and say I understand that there's more going on without saying Kobbie Mainoo's crap and Ruben Amorim is the best thing on earth. And it doesn't work that way. Just, we don't have to constantly put one down to bring the side up because it's not a war. Because it's not a war. There can be a correctly mutual departure that also doesn't mean either side is wrong, funnily enough. And I'm not saying that that's where it should go. That's not where I want it to go. But it's possible for that to be the case without one person necessarily being totally at fault and that someone's bad and someone's good in that scenario. That's part of growing up too, is recognizing that kind of circumstance. It's like Bruno. Bruno is a really, really, really top player. It can also be right that United have to move on from being a Bruno team without saying Bruno's shit and his contributions have never been good and he's been bad for 20 years or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like you've got to be able to see both perspectives. You have to. You have to. Without it constantly being one way or another. That's all. That's all I'll share. So thank you all for being here. And as you go, please make sure to drop a like on the video. Subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you later. And I appreciate you all hanging out for a long-winded discussion. And I'll be back tomorrow. So I thank you very much for being here, for being respectful with me, with each other, and all of that. I might do a Twitter Spaces in the morning. I did one last week, and we were at our low point. It went a lot better than I thought. I'd like to do a new one. I said I want to do it every week. I might do one tomorrow morning, so we might be back on Twitter Spaces sometime tomorrow. Okay? Thanks for hanging out, guys. I will catch you all on the flippity flop. See you later. Have a good evening. Enjoy the rest of the game if you're watching, and see you later. And again, please make sure to like, subscribe, and all that as you go. Also, there will be a video posted over on Andy Footy with an Edge with another podcast episode for myself, Sameeks, and him. So when that's out, I don't think it's out yet. Make sure to take a watch. Okay? See you later, guys.